Hello, this is Todd Creager. I want to talk to you about a successful couple that I work with that maybe you could resonate with. And this couple, I want to focus on a theme, and that is the power of your perceptions. That when couples get together, especially as time goes on, they end up developing these perceptions of their partner, usually based on real happenings, but then these perceptions get so locked in that they cannot even recognize that we're limiting our partners by our perceptions, basically. So we need to beware of our perceptions of our partner. So there's one couple, I'll give you an example here. A little bit of background. Okay, so the husband came from a family where his parents fought a lot. His dad felt picked on a lot by his mom, who was really critical of him, and he tended to want to defend his own father sometimes because the mom was very critical. And so for him, he actually he discussed with me how he took it personally, that when his dad was put down, he almost felt like his mom was putting him down. So not to go into too much more detail, but that is one of the major dynamics that happened, that he always felt very defensive for his father. He gets married, and his wife is someone who came from a family where there was a lot of letdowns by men. A biological father who was abusive and didn't come through, and other men in the life that just didn't come through and really let her down, and really she felt abandoned. So when she got married to him, she thought a person who was caring and loving and someone who's going to be safe. The problem is, and this is another point I want to make in this, is not only do perceptions. Point number one is perceptions of each other make a difference, which we're going to go into in more detail. But the other thing is our perceptions are colored and clouded by our past relationships. There's something I oftentimes say, there's an 80-20 rule, that 80% of relationship problems have really nothing to do with the couple, the current couple. It has to do with other things that people bring into the relationship that gets projected onto each other. It's just what happens. That's very rough, obviously, 80%, 20%. But what I'm basically saying, a great majority of our issues, we really need to kind of float back to earlier times to try to understand, how do you perceive me? So this couple, they are a normal couple that had some issues as time went on. And if he forgot to bring something home from the store, or he forgot to tell her he's going to be a little late, the old feelings in her that I'm going to be abandoned or a man's going to let me down came up, and her intensity of the emotions were pretty strong compared to possibly if you just looked at it neutrally, like what he forgot to do. But it triggered that, and her perceptions now of him was, you're one more man that's going to let me down. And so in the meantime, he hears this intense emotion about, wow, I do a lot of good things, but I forgot this, what? And he feels criticized, and he goes back to his old childhood unconsciously, and he has got to fight not his dad's battles at this point, but his own. And so he doesn't handle her very well at all. As a matter of fact, he gets really defensive and he gets really angry back. So that was their pattern. And then she would end up feeling like she can't accept his feelings, her feelings. Getting these pronouns mixed up. She doesn't have the experience of that you're just listening to me, because he gets so defensive. And of course he says, yeah, but you're overreacting to everything. And so now both of them are experiencing the other is overreacting. So what do we do? What did I do with this couple, and how did they successfully navigate this? They started with realizing that there's more to what's going on with them than what's just going on with them in the current. They got curious about their past. I helped them get curious about their past, but they were willing clients, and it made sense. It started to make sense. This is how we're wired. There's a part of us, there's wounded parts of us that get triggered by a partner, and they come out sometimes very strong. And then the way I manage my wounded part triggers your wounded part. And with this couple, that's what happened. So The husband, when he got triggered, the way he dealt with it triggered more of her feeling like you're letting me down. And the more she dealt with feeling let down, the more he felt criticized. And the beat went on. But through awareness, through understanding that there's more to this than going on, than what they thought, that they both held their perceptions more tentatively. In other words, they got humble. They decided that my perceptions of you may not be the whole truth. And so, for example, the husband started to perceive her not as an angry, critical person, wife, nagging, never satisfied, but rather a person who had some real fears, legitimately coming from her background, of being let down. So when he starts to perceive her that way and not take it as personally, what happens? He starts to become more compassionate. As he becomes more compassionate, of course, she is experiencing, wow, this hasn't happened before. I could be angry and it's safe. He doesn't go away. He doesn't abandon me. Now, likewise, she had work to do. And her work, regardless of how defensive or not he got, was to understand him and shift her perception from, here's another person, another man that's going to let me down, to this is a man who has some real fears of being judged, fears of not being good enough, fears of being criticized. And that I got to take that into consideration and not take it personally. So again, the more they didn't take it personally, they start to free up their perceptions. So now she's free to see him as a person who cares, even though once in a while he might forget something. And he sees her as a person who is accepting and understanding, even though once in a while she gets triggered and may come off more critical. And so they would slip into these patterns. I always say this to couples, if you have a successful week, doesn't mean that you won't get triggered next week. But the key is they would repair it. They would catch it. Oh, here, we're doing this again. Okay, what's really going on? Okay, I'm perceiving you in those old locked in ways. I better be aware of that and change it, because the more I see you in the negative pattern, the more I'll bring it out. And the more I see you in the more kinder, positive, and I would say even truer way, the more it opens you up, breaks you free of your own limitations. You can become that what I want when I perceive that of you. And so this couple really went from a couple that was so angry. They came to me like many couples do, on the brink of divorce. They couldn't take the anger and the fighting anymore, to a couple that was truly able to become confidants with each other, to be able to practice, because they practice this, but to open up to their deeper feelings, the deeper fears, the deeper sadnesses, the deeper hurts. I deal with this a lot in my programs and my therapy, and I think that the more we start to take a closer look at what's going on here and not be as quick to assume our perceptions are correct, that the more possibility for shifting and changing. And that's when the miracle happens. So, another successful couple, and I've had couples that have some variations on this dynamic, believe me, throughout my years. And if you resonate with that at all, just know that there's a lot of hope. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.